afternoon and welcome to the Committee on Higher Education. We have a number of items today, and first, let me just have housekeeping. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. In the likely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on Thursday, February 8th at 3 p.m. in this conference room 229, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. And there is a 2-minute time limit per testifier. And today is Tuesday, February 6th. And with that, we will start with our first bill, Senate Bill 2542. This is relating to the University of Hawaii Maui College Molokai Education Center. It makes an appropriation to the University of Hawaii for the relocation and expansion of the University of Hawaii Maui College Molokai Education Center. And first to testify is Erica LaCroix with the community colleges in person.
Thank you. We provided written testimony and we stand on that testimony.
Okay, just really quick, I noticed you say here that University of Hawaii supports the intent on the condition that any funds appropriated in support of this program does not supplant any portion of the university's budget requests. Isn't that kind of like a cop-out? Like you either support it or you don't. Is it a priority or isn't it?
Senator, all of our testimonies basically says that.
I have noted that.
Because of the priorities set by the Board of Regents for the university.
Yeah, well, I think that's the concern that we have, that the university should set priorities. And if you're going to come and start testifying in support of every other program, then you have to be ready to fund it or come up with funding if it's that important, but to say you support it, but you don't want it supplanting your funds. So, you keep growing the university. I mean,
We'll take that message back to the university.
Good, I will appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Let's see, we don't have anyone else in person. We have Alice Lee, Kael Duarte, Tamara Patman, all in support. Anyone here wishing to testify on this measure or on Zoom? Hearing non-members, any questions?
Yes.
Yes, Senator Kidani.
Why is there a need to relocate the education center?
Senator, the current Molokai Ed Center is in the flood zone, and it's also subject to the sea rise level in the next whenever that should happen. So the thought here is it would be better if we could relocate the center rather than spending money to do other things to improve the center as it currently exists.
I see, so there were things that needed to be improved, but no
Yes.
sense using it. The facility should be moved.
Correct.
Got it, thank you.
This bill, there was a bill like this last year.
I'm not sure.
Senate Bill 3340.
I think, given what we know right now, the potential of getting some land from Kamehameha schools is a possibility. So at this point, it might be better if we were to try to pursue that end before asking for monies to rebuild the education center. Settle the land issue so that we know where we could relocate to.
Okay, because this came up last year, so you would think you folks have more of these things definitively set. How soon does it have to be relocated?
It's not expected for many years in terms of sea level rise. But again, to do the expansion that is being asked for right now, it's going to cost upwards of $10 million to do that. So we don't anticipate moving right away.
Okay.
So, yes. So you're expanding because of capacity. What is the capacity of the center now?
Sorry, Senator, I don't have that information.
What is the enrollment?
Enrollment is a little over 500 students currently.
Okay, so it's kind of reached its capacity now, is what you're saying?
Yes.
500 students. How many employees on campus?
We have a director and some clerical and technical help, and the others are lecturers that teach courses. And we also stream from the main campus at UH Maui College.
And so are you guys in current negotiations with Kamehameha schools?
Not as at this point, not yet.
Okay, but that's just a proposed site that you
Right.
would like. So when are you going to start negotiations?
Now that we know that this is a possibility, Senator DeCoit has mentioned this and informed us that all of this are possibilities, so this is something that we need to pursue further.
Okay, but we can relocate, but we don't have a site actually yet.
At this point, no, we don't.
So is this bill not premature then?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, hearing no others, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is Senate Bill 2634, relating to healthcare education. This makes an appropriation for the expansion of the certified nurse aide to practical nurse bridge program at the University of Hawaii Maui College, including funding for instructional costs and student aid. Testifier, let's see, Jay Butai, Department of Labor, in person, okay. Jay, you're here for Jade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kidani, Jay Shibashi, the department stands on its testimony and support.
Okay, thank you. See, community colleges, is it Erica or is it Mike?
We stand on our written testimony.
Okay. We have Alice Lee, testifying for Maui County, in support. Christian Fern, in support.
We stand on our testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you. A number of others in support. Anyone else here wishing to testify on the measure or on Zoom? Hearing none, questions? Let's see, so maybe Erica. So the bill has blank as far as the appropriations. What approximately cost might be?
200,000.
200,000. Do we have a similar program in Honolulu?
Which one are you referring to?
This bill, the bridge appropriation, expansion for the certified nurse aide practical nurse bridge program in Maui?
Not at Honolulu.
Not in Honolulu?
No.
Is there a need for one?
No, because we work with KCC, and so they are able to handle that need in the healthcare field.
Okay, any other questions, members? Not, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Senate Bill 2502 relating to the generation of wildfire susceptibility maps for Hawaii requires the University of Hawaii to establish and implement a 2-year program to develop web GIS, wildfire susceptibility, and vulnerability maps for the state of Hawaii to determine which communities, landscapes, buildings, and infrastructure are most vulnerable to future wildfires, appropriates money, declares the appropriation exceeds the general fund expenditure ceiling. And testifying on this measure, Brendan Moroka.
Chairman Tonkin, Vice Chair Kinani, Senator Memorial on behalf of the University of Hawaii, stand on our written testimony.
Okay, we have Candace Park, Deputy Attorney General. Candace?
Good afternoon, Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kidani, member of the committee. We raised the concern on Articles 10 Section 6 of the Hawaii Constitution in our written testimony, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we do have a number of others. Abe Simmons in support, El Toriki in opposition, Tamara Palton, support, Clay Trinich, I can't pronounce the last name, but also in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, see Brendan? Again, that testimony saying that, you support this, but
Yes,
if it
Senator.
adversely affects the budget, then you're not in favor of it. Is that correct?
I'm still in favor of it, but yes, this is standard template language that I share my feelings with my colleague, Mr. Unibasami on this. It does put us in a very awkward position.
Yeah, because, we could say when you folks come in, say, yeah, we support your program, but if it doesn't affect the rest of the budget, then it's always gonna affect something, right?
Yes.
Somebody's budget's gonna be affected.
I feel that the programs, this and then Senate Bill 2284, which you're gonna hear on Thursday as well. These two modeling programs that are meant to assist decision makers as well as first responders in the event of wildfires. To me, it has a lot of value.
How much do you think this is gonna cost?
This, both 2502 and 2284 are both $1 million each for the development
million.
of, yes.
And how long?
It'll take approximately 2 years to develop with data collection, outreach with all the different first responders and as well as some of the planning agencies.
Now, will work in conjunction with the bill we're gonna hear on Thursday, or this is either or
They
in combination?
can stand alone, but they work better if they're both in existence because it's artificial intelligence and machine learning where the two platforms will talk to and inform each other on the decisions that, or the recommendations that each platform will make. But they could stand alone if needed.
Members, any questions?
Just as a follow-up, you also have Division of Forestry and Wildlife. So is the USDA Forestry and Wildlife also assisting at the federal level, or is this purely standalone?
No, right now,
initiative?
it's DOFOF with DLNR. So our researchers have been in contact with the various agencies, DLNR, HAIMA, Pacific Disaster Center, all in trying to figure out what is the best form of model that to be useful to decision makers and first responders. So it's done in collaboration with all the different agencies, including NOAA, actually, we just met with them.
Okay, I guess because there are a variety of federal grants that are available currently, and I think, what was it? It was mentioned that there's something on the level of 200 million per year as part of an initial 5-year initiative that we could apply for. So would the work here also be something that we could use to apply for bigger projects over and beyond this initial effort? Because Hawaii is also the center of the Pacific Fire Exchange, which is also kind of a model for what could be developed within the Pacific region.
Yes, absolutely. We actually currently have a $1 million grant for some of the initial work from FEMA. And so we would utilize a lot of this and leverage it for more federal monies, but FEMA can often take a long, we actually put something in 2 years ago that we're still waiting for response from FEMA on a similar model, but different topic. So this would help us get there and then allow us to leverage the work to get more federal grants.
Well, it's almost like you have two pathways, because the FEMA route is kind of emergency, safety kinds of considerations, but some of the wildfire mitigation could become a real national and international model. And I think that's where this
Yes.
could tie in with some of the
Absolutely.
other federal funds that are available.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Question for AG?
Can you specify what language in the bill was of concern to the AG's office?
The concern is that it's missing the statewide, the indication that the law is a matter of statewide concern.
I'm not sure in what that was referenced to.
Oh, I'm sorry, so the, in accordance with Article 10, Section 6 of the Constitution, the University of Hawaii is basically autonomous unless the legislature finds that a matter is of statewide concern, and that gives the legislature the authority to implement a law which would affect the University of Hawaii. So what I was pointing out was that this law does not contain the necessary language of that the law, identifying the law as a matter of statewide concern.
Okay, so specifically in the bill, did you have a place where that should be inserted?
Yeah, we have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
It was just this bill, right? Wasn't the other two?
No, just this one right now, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 3257 relating to University of Hawaii requires the establishment of a one-stop student service center at each University of Hawaii campus with student enrollment greater than 5,000 students beginning the fall of 2025 semester, requires services provided by one-stop student service center not reduce existing services or resources, and requires a report to the legislature and declares the general fund exceeded, makes an appropriation. So we do have one testifier, Deborah Halbert. I'm surprised we have no students here. I met with the students or the grad assistants, and you would think that they would be coming in and testifying on some of these measures, but please, go for it.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Deborah Halbert, Vice President for Academic Strategy. On the screen, you will also see Associate Vice President Gomes for Student Affairs, and she has more details, of course, if you have any questions about the bill itself or our response to the bill. We do stand on our testimony of the 3 campuses that have 5,000 students or more, so Manoa, Kapiolani, and Leeward. We do have services put into a single space, not one, so we're unclear necessarily what one stop means in the context of a building versus a new conceptualization of what this would look like, so that's where we stop.
Okay, why don't you sit there, because I believe you are the only testifier. Members, do you have any questions? I have a number of questions. So, you know, before we introduced this measure, we did call the university to find out, in fact, if we have a one-stop. And we were told that some of the colleges have implemented service centers for students that offer a wide range of student services. They were unsure, referred us to UH Manoa Queen Liliuokalani Center for Student Services. They do not have one counter for services, but multiple offices within the same building. Did not provide information on any of the other campuses, but the campuses implement their own service processes. So yeah, we weren't able to get more information. So I heard from some students saying that they were sent to different buildings or different parts of the building. So what stops the university from doing this, sort of like some of the other mainland colleges, these one stop where students are having to maneuver?
Between offices. Let me turn that over to Associate Vice President Gomes to talk through, because she's been working with the student affairs folks on these issues.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair. Thank you for the question. For the 3 campuses in particular that that are impacted by this bill, they have really made an effort to bring all of the services into the same space. So from an access standpoint, this does increase the access for students, and I don't believe many of them are referred outside of the building. However, because of the specialty for some of these offices, for example, financial aid, registration, veteran services, some of these positions actually require certain certifications and specializations. So it is difficult to have all of the services in a single place. But if the model that that the bill might be suggesting is a concierge model, that is something that we might be able to look at a little bit differently than bringing all services into one space. I would like to point out that the part of the bill that speaks about not reducing existing services, I think that could be accomplished. All it would do is move the staff though from their regular office into the shared space. So I think some of this is achievable, and it's a matter of defining the reconceptualization of space to accomplish it.
How many of these people in this building that you have all the services are teleworking?
I don't have that information. I can coordinate a response between the three campuses.
Do you have any idea? I mean,
I don't. Telework is managed at the campus level.
but it affects students coming in to get these services, correct? I mean, if
Yes.
people are teleworking, they're not there face to face with these students. So
Correct.
that's the concern, that we have one, and you know, not only do you not have them all in one counter, one spot, but also it could be teleworking. And if they are teleworking, then as far as space-wise, you should have more space available to do this. But, you know, when you mention concierge type of service, you know, these are things that we're looking at the university to see how you can manage all of this for your students. It shouldn't come from us. It should be initiated by the university, and we only respond to students' concerns when they call us. I mean, we don't, you know, don't sit around and dream this thing up. Also, when we go to conferences on the mainland and we talk to our counterparts and they talk about their services and their one-stop shops and wonder, okay, why don't our university have that? Or why aren't we taking the lead, or the university taking the lead? And if you don't take the lead, then we're gonna dream it up. And so, you know, for you to say that, oh, if this is the model, then perhaps you guys should come up with what is the model that would enable us to be of more service to the students. Now, some states even have like SNAP benefits and other benefits, possibly not having where they can actually register, but have information, have forms available for the students that need it, you know, so we can assist them as far as them being able to afford attending college. So are those things that are being talked about or discussed? Do we have
Yes.
to do a bill?
Now, so I can say that's absolutely already in place. The 7 community colleges actually have a contract, and their program is called HiNet, and the assistance for applying for SNAP benefits is inclusive in that. We also have a UH system basic needs committee that tries to bring together all of those components as well. We have representatives from all 10 campuses and making significant progress in that area. So it is definitely something that committee just started in 2019, and we're working on our second version of a master plan. And I think there's definitely great progress that all of the campuses have made in these last few years.
Okay, well, that's 4 years. That's a long time for something like this to come to fruition. So what I'd like to do is, I don't want to pass a bill or a law if you're already doing something. But I think we need to get more from you. We need to get a proposal, or how you can achieve something like this for the benefit of the students without possibly us having to pass a law. So over the interim, I'm hoping that you folks will be in more contact and come up with stuff that we can look at so that we don't have to do this.
Can do. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
your feedback and comments. Okay. We are on Senate Bill 2004, relating to elections, designates the University of Hawaii system campuses as voter registration agencies as defined in the National Voter Registration Act, requires the chief election officer to use data concerning voter registration and election participation to study voter registration, absentee voting, and provisional voting trends by age, race, and class to improve youth voter registration and educate election participation. Allows student identification cards issued by the University of Hawaii to be used as registered to vote, and designates all University of Hawaii campuses as voter service centers. We have a number of people that have registered to commented on this. So, but first up, we have Deborah Albert.
Good afternoon again. There's just three pieces of this particular bill that I would highlight. We do stand on our written testimony. The first piece about the voter service agency, we do offer on our websites access to all the voter registration forms, and we have detailed instructions for students about where to go on campus if they need more information. So we do basically comply with the National Voter Registration Act. However, in the testimony, we also highlight that for the most part, this is an online process in Hawaii now, and so having face-to-face services is a less needed than it used to be. In terms of voter service centers, we would of course defer to the various counties about what they need in terms of logistical support for those, because of course, as you know, voter service centers are where people would come to vote when they're not voting by mail, which is primarily the way that they do that now. And then just as a point of information, for the Hawaii IDs, or if we're using student IDs, those don't have signatures on them, but they do have the name and a photograph of the student. And that's just more for your information in terms of what those look like. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. John Hendricks, testifying for Hawaii Elections Division, comments. Jack Fountain Tanigawa, testifying for the Office of the County Clerk of Kauai with comments. Michael Golgi, testifying for Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party for Hawaii.
Good afternoon, Senators. Michael Golia Jr. on behalf of the Stonewall Caucus for the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We stand in strong support of this bill. We believe anything that would engage our younger voters to be part of the election process. We know cost is always a problem when it comes to paying for anything in this state. So the voter service centers, if we would limit those to just the campuses where they have dorms, to ensure that those that are not living at home have access to the voter service centers, and that anything we can do until we have automatic voter registration to ensure everybody's registered to vote is a welcome benefit from this bill. So we encourage you to do what you need to do to make sure that we can pass this to gain, so we have further access for voting. Mahalo.
Thank you. Hanalei G, testifying for Hawaii State on Zoom.
Aloha Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kirani, and members of the Senate Committee on Higher Education. My name is Hanalei G, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Hawaii State Youth Commission. The Hawaii State Youth Commission is in strong support of SB 2004. As mentioned in our written testimony, the youth must be able to have a say in their representation through the democratic processes allowed to them. However, many youth face barriers when it comes to voting, one of them being the time constraints and expectations of schooling. On college campuses, voter registration and voting itself may not be the highest priority for students. From data from November 2020, the U.S. Census Bureau reported that only 41.9% of youth aged 18 to 24 were registered to vote in Hawaii, and 29% of the same age group showed up to vote. While there's work to be done regarding Hawaii's civic education, making voting visible and accessible at college campuses is a tangible first step that can be accomplished today. The University of Hawaii system has nearly 49,000 students enrolled at its schools. Designating college campuses as voter registration sites and voter service centers makes voting significantly easier for these 49,000 students, allowing them an accessible space to utilize their voice and vote. Transforming college campuses into spaces for active participation in democracy is a crucial first step in engaging Hawaii's youth in elections and political processes. Therefore, the Hawaii State Youth Commission strongly urges the committee to pass SB 2004, and mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you. Jamie Detweiler,
Not present on Zoom, Chair.
opposition. David Nichols, individual in Zoom.
Present on Zoom, Chair.
Okay, also in opposition. Holly Plackett for the League of Women Voters in support. And then we have 51 testimonies in opposition. So we had a total of 7 in support, 51 was opposed, and 3 comments. Anyone here wishing to testify on this measure? Not on Zoom. Hearing none. Members, any questions? Senator Fukunaga.
You know, I believe the city elections clerk is available in the audience. And I noted that the testimony from 2 counties raised some concerns about costs associated with becoming voter service centers. So I'm just curious as to whether or not this type of service would incur additional costs for City and County of Honolulu and the university.
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. As far as what you see at the service centers that we operate on Oahu, both at Kapolei and at Honolulu, it takes us roughly 20 staff persons to operate a service center at that size. You know, given that if we had to operate 5 additional sites at the UH campuses, that could run us labor-wise upwards of about $250,000 to $300,000 to just on labor alone for each election cycle to do a primary and a general election. You know, that being said, there's great merit to this bill. Obviously, it's the students and that age cohort is one that hasn't really engaged in their political voice yet. But again, I believe, you know, what we're trying to do anyway, is to recognize the legislature's policy to administer an election scheme that really maximizes and preserves voting by mail as the primary service mechanism. So to that end, you know, I think that is what we should be pushing forward for this cohort, not necessarily a bricks and mortar site on the grounds. But again, a policy decision on your part. And I'm just here to answer any other technical questions regarding the bill if there are any.
Thank you very much.
So I don't know if you have the bill in front of you, but essentially, so your issue is with Section 5, right? So that each university campus shall be a voter service center, right? So if you delete that out, then the rest you feel is
I mean, that would be our
fine.
largest concern because obviously it can become, you know, a resource hog, if you will. Right now, what you see with our voter service centers, you're seeing on the very last day, it probably represents about 4% of all of the votes cast in an election. We like to keep things in that proportion and, you know, recognizing that the legislature did say to operate a limited number of service centers. So that would be our concern, but again, a policy call on your part.
Because the service centers are funded by the county, right?
Well, they are funded by us and we pass on cost sharing to the state election office as well.
Okay. But you're okay with well, I guess for your particular concerns, is the rest of the bill okay, or?
Again, you know, if you want to enshrine that in law, I guess that's your call. I think as the UH mentioned, it's probably not necessary because they're doing this already. I think the federal law already says that we're allowed to use any government issued document as an ID. I think that the UH ID would already fall into that category under the federal law. Whether you want to put it in state law is again, you know, your choice.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And I guess the testimony from UH said they're already serving as a voter registration agency is defined in the National Voter Registration. So they're already doing that, and that's the key part of the bill.
Right. It may be redundant, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members? Okay, hearing none, we are moving on to our last measure, which is Senate Bill 3340 relating to livestock requires the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Ag and Human Resources in consultation with livestock industry stakeholders to conduct a study to assess the effects of heat stress on beef cattle during inter-island ocean transportation, requires a report to the legislature, and declares that the general fund expenditure is exceeded, makes an appropriation. So testifying, we have Department of Ag.
Good afternoon, Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kidani, members of the committee. The Department of Agriculture is Isaac Maeda on behalf of the Department of Ag. We stand on our testimony and support, and we offer comments. Thank you.
University of Hawaii is You're not Anna, but.
I would like to convey apologies from Interim Dean Anya Bichor for not being able to be here. She had every intention, and that's why her name was submitted with the testimony. So Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kidani, and members of the committee, we appreciate this opportunity. We feel like this is a bill and a study that our stakeholders, the livestock industry, have wanted for some time. And we're fully prepared to conduct a study, the type of study, detailed data collection that would track through sensors what's happening to the animals, because it feeds back into the quality of the meat as well. Of course, the ideal would be to have slaughterhouses on every island, and you wouldn't need to ship animals from island to island. So we are quite happy to take on this charge, and we have faculty and students who would be quite intrigued with this opportunity to collect this data, because it's not the type of study that's done very often. So we stand on our testimony in support of the intent of this bill.
What kind of funding would we need for this?
Okay, the numbers that are being quoted to me would be about 80,000. So this would include support for graduate students. We would have faculty members overseeing the work of the graduate students as well.
Okay. Members, questions? I do have some questions that I'm going to go through. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure?
So my question is basically how the data would be used, basically the purpose for the study.
Okay, so this would, if stress is affecting the animals, which therefore it's affecting the economic component, the meat, then we would have to look at the cost, for example, of doing it in air conditioning, or other interventions that could hopefully reduce the temperature during the transport. But before we could do the economics on that, and working with the livestock industry, we would need to have the data to show what the economic outcome would be if you did have interventions such as maintaining a cool environment. It's sort of like the cold chain for produce. The sooner you can get products from the field into the cold chain, the higher the quality of the produce that gets to the market for the consumers. And there may be other interventions too that would come out of a more detailed study.
Yeah, so I was just curious as to whether or not there were any statistics now as to how much of the livestock is not usable because of stress or heat or whatever. If we have any of that information that makes this such a big concern.
Yes, I do not have at hand data indicating this. It's my understanding that the livestock industry has gathered some data to show that there is the possibility that the heat in these in these containers reaches extremely high conditions. So it's not only the feedback on the quality of the meat, but also on the health of the animal itself.
So can I
So what-
interject? So how many cattle is actually being transported a month or a year? Or
I don't have that data, but
can you come forward?
I don't have that data, but I can get it for you. Probably the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council can get that information.
Yeah, when you first come and support a measure, you guys gotta have some back information, because we're gonna ask for that. right?
Yeah, the study that's being proposed is important because without objective data to look at what are the temperatures that are occurring, what is the effect on the cattle, if any?
Right.
Because transport inter-island has been going on for quite a while, and it hasn't had any kind of,
Yeah, but how many cattle actually die, or how many?
there was only one report a few years back of a shipment from Kauai, and that was because from our understanding, what happened with that shipment is that it was loaded improperly. It was not placed such that it could get adequate ventilation. And because of that, there was no airflow, there was no ventilation, and the cattle overheated.
So that's the only one?
Yeah.
So there's not really a huge problem. Is there
No.
any studies anywhere else?
There's a lot of different studies internationally on the effect of heat and what have you, but I think it's important for us because as an island state, we have a lot of inter-island transport. And so we need to have an objective evaluation of, is it a problem? Is it not a problem? Right now, it's more speculative, and that's why we need the data to make that determination.
Yeah, so I was curious about this. So I went online and I found a whole bunch of studies already done
Yeah.
by USC, Iowa State University, Arizona, the effects of heat stress on beef cattle, heat stress and reproduction in beef cattle,
Yeah.
heat stress in cattle, long statements, Ohio State University. And so then I actually went on ChatGPT and found that heat stress can have severe consequences of beef cattle during ocean transport. They even give you some of the dehydration, hyperthermia, respiratory disease, reduced productivity, increased susceptibility to disease, behavioral changes, mortality. And they even talk about, to mitigate these effects, proper management practices. They talk about ventilation, they talk about fresh water, cooling times of the day when possible, monitoring the cattle closely. So I don't know if we're gonna spend $80,000 and yet there's all kinds of studies and recommendations. I mean, common sense, I don't know common sense, but some sense will tell you, yeah, there is heat stress on these animals.
There's possibly some amount of heat
Right.
stress, but again, we need to find out whether or not it is significant, that it is causing a substantial situation that needs to be addressed, and what kind of mitigation activities
But
can be
shouldn't you
done to
get the
do that.
data yet to see how much of this cattle, how much cattle are we actually transporting, and how many actually die or get
Well,
sick?
the
or-
death toll is not high. Like I
Right.
said, it was a one shipment.
So again, I'm just, not sure when we spend all this money on studies, when there's other places, we've done enough research to find out just other places that might have the information for us
Not
before we
actually,
spend
not
80,000 of the
actually,
tax dollars.
not actually in a tropical condition like in Hawaii, and not with the type of containers that kind of were developed here. In fact, a lot of the other places,
But you don't have to be that, I mean, if you have a container and they're similar, I mean, you can almost draw some conclusions, which is what you're gonna have to do in your
yeah,
studies
but
anyway.
we don't want to make assumptions. That's dangerous if you make
No,
assumptions.
but I mean, okay, I'm not gonna argue this. It just seems like, yeah, I mean, we spend so much monies on studies and stuff that I don't know that it's really warranted sometimes for the kind of cost that we're asking, when there is so much of that information already available that we can draw from, and maybe look
Yeah.
at that first.
A lot
and
of those-
then come up with something that says, well, we still need more, but I'm not
True,
sure.
but a lot of the
more.
studies on heat stress, what they're doing is they're actually taking cattle and they're subjecting them to heat stress. So what we're trying to do with this study, well, not us, but what the study is going to attempt to determine too is what exactly are the temperatures that's reaching inside of these containers? How is it being transferred, if at all, to the animals? What are the conditions during transport from before, after, and what are the animals like before and after? So yes, you have studies that have basically taken animals and subjected them to stress
You
of
better
different
read
conditions.
all your reports, because these reports I'm reading in actual situations, so not necessarily being exposed to the heat stress, outside of what's going on.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so, I mean.
I did.
Yeah, well, I did too, so,
Okay.
I mean, and I don't know a thing about cattle and so forth, but just what simple research that I've done, only because I'm looking after the taxpayers' dollars.
Sure.
I'm looking after the industry as to where this funding can be utilized. I mean, if we can avoid a study and maybe look at these, how do we provide better ventilation, because whether or not the study comes out, they still need ventilation, right?
Right.
They still need care, they still need all of this stuff. So I think that's important that the funding can go towards that. Remembers, any other questions, Senator Kidani?
I was curious, so has anyone ever tried maybe taking the temperature of the cattle when they come off?
I don't think there has been an objective study done like that.
Study, just.
Okay, is there, I know there's a law about humane treatment of animals.
Right.
Does that also apply to?
Well, that's
when
another
you're-
reason. That's another reason for the study, because you
Okay,
can
but that's
establish
not-
whether or
That's
not
not
it's.
said in that report, I don't think. Yeah, that's my question, so
Yeah, it would address that too.
thank you.
How would it address that in the sense that if it's not humane to put them in these carts, whatever we put them in and we ship it, then what's the alternative?
Well, industry and the department would not agree that it's inhumane, but there are organizations that feel otherwise. So this is why, by having an objective determination, you can say,
Yeah, but what are you gonna do if the study says it's inhumane? You're gonna stop transporting them?
then we'd have to figure something else out. But again, that's an assumption without having information to base that assumption on.
Okay. Any other questions, members? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going into recess. Decision making. Okay, I'm going to call back to order the Committee on Higher Education. We're in decision-making. First recommendation on the Molokai, relocating of Maui College on Molokai Education Center, Senate Bill 2542. We're going to defer this measure. The recommendation by the senator of the district said that to defer it for now because it's premature. So any discussion, members? Any objections? Hearing none. On Senate Bill 2634, this is on making appropriation to expand the certified nurse aide practical nurse bridge program at the University of Hawaii Maui College. Senator Hashimoto said this is a good measure. I'll take his word for it. So the recommendation, the appropriation is already blank, so I don't believe we have any technical amendments, so to pass as is. Any discussion? Hearing none, chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye. Senator, myself, I vote aye. Senator Fukunaga.
Aye.
Senator Hashimoto.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Measures adopted, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Senate Bill 2502, this is the wildfire susceptibility plan maps for Hawaii. Recommendation is to a SD1 for technical non-substantive amendments, as well as language pointed out by the Attorney General of statewide concern, and the appropriation is blank. So any discussion, members? Hearing none, chair votes aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Fukunaga.
Aye.
Senator Hashimoto.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Measures adopted, Madam Chair.
Okay. Senate Bill 3257, this is relating to the one-stop services at the University of Hawaii campus. I'm going to recommend we defer this measure, members. I want to allow the university opportunity to look at what they have now and how we can enhance it, so for the benefit of the students, and we can always revisit this next session. So any discussion, any objections? Hearing none. Senate Bill 2004 relating to elections. This designate all the University of Hawaii system campuses as voter registration agencies. While we all want to have more of our young people vote, and we think that it's certainly very important, I think the fact of mail-in ballots is in fact the policy that was set by the legislature, and it seems to be working well. The consideration of the costs involved and that the university is already complying with the Voter Act, that we defer this measure for now. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none. So ordered. And finally, on Senate Bill 3340 relating to livestock, I'm going to recommend again we defer this measure. I'm going to talk with the author of the measure from the Big Island, and we could always put this back on the agenda for decision making at a later date. Any discussion? Any opposition? If not, that's it. We're done. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.